episode stream 22 of this series on programming an NES game from scratch, live on Twitch. Last time we were going to end the stream early, and then I got the suggestion from someone watching that maybe I try to do something cool with the graphics, and that turned out to be a little bit more challenging than expected because I didn't want to do any sort of crazy rasterization type effects, but I did want to try and start doing a status bar. So the idea was that, you know, if you have the screen here with the ship and, you know, have the level like this, I wanted to have some sort of HUD here. So the first thing we need to do is try and figure out why that wasn't working. One of the things that I read in between this stream and the last one was that one of the things that we didn't do last time was we didn't wait for the bit for sprite 0 to get cleared out. So what we should do here is we should actually do exactly that. Excuse me. So what we should do is we should loop while it's not 0. Excuse me, meaning that it was hit and we haven't reset the V blank yet. And at the beginning of every V blank, it's going to reset the bit, and then we want to go into this. So that shouldn't change anything. That shouldn't change anything in theory, but it should make a difference in terms of the way that that is functioning under the covers, or underneath the hood, however you want to phrase it. So it's obviously locked up again. So what's interesting about this is, so let me think about this for a second. So if this bit is set to 1, that means that the sprite 0 hit has occurred. So if we do an AND on the value of A and we get back a 0, then we should continue on to here where we do the check, and now we wait for it to be set to 1, meaning that we got sprite 0 set up. Oh, wait a minute, where is sprite? Why is sprite 0 not showing up? So let's take a look at the, where is the graphic for that? That's not supposed to be like that. So the reason sprite 0 isn't getting hit is because there's no tile with the graphic there. It's got to be a non-transparent pixel overlap. So that's weird. What happened there? Did I maybe... It's possible I messed that up during the last stream. I don't remember. All right, let's see. Where was I even doing that? I think it was. Oh, okay. Well, let's. This is the place here. Yeah, initialize sprite 0. Load X0, load A. The Y position. Load. Oh, so I'm not actually setting the tile, which I guess I should be. So increment X, load A, store A. It's weird. I don't remember that not working before we ended last time, but who knows? Okay, so now we're working, and that's because we've got a non-transparent pixel there. I wonder if it was an artifact of something the way that Ntaco was working with the reset. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at the OEM data. Yeah, that looks right. And the pattern tables. So, you know, it's possible that it was some junk value that was in there. Maybe I just need to initialize it to 0. And that'll fix it. And it was just because I kept resetting. Yeah, okay. All right, well, that's good. All right, so, no, I don't want to exit. So that's good that we're now getting this to work. And basically what I want to do is I want to make this portion of the screen be fixed versus this top portion, because that's essentially what we're going to, that's what essentially the HUD will be. So the other thing is that once the sprite 0 hit occurs, and the code wasn't really specific about this that I recall. I mean, I remember it saying specifically something like you have to wait for the scan line to finish, and so basically it loaded X with the value 10 in hex, and then it's scan line. What? It's not dex, is it? One of these days, I will actually remember all of the opcodes. Oh, it is dex for 6502, and I won't have to guess anymore. So let's see. So if you decrement that, it does set the 0 flag. So branch not equal to wait scan line, which needs a colon. So basically, I'm just counting down from 16, and then what I want to do is I want to load the scroll values 0. I want to just make it scroll to the 0 position. Hey, Cobalt Ethon. Yeah, I'm writing an assembly in 6502 assembler. Alright, so let's reset this. So that's still not changing the scan line the way that I want it to. So look at the name table. So that's okay, but the I would expect that it would. So something I'm doing with the scroll registers is wrong. So let's take a look here at the reference, because I thought it was going to be as simple as that, but let's take a look. So yeah, so I should be doing, that's 2002. So I'm doing the bit on that. I'm loading the X position, and I'm storing it twice. Laralk, or Laralk, I'm not sure how you say that. No, for Super Nintendo, you're still using assembly. If you're writing a game for Game Boy Advance, you can use C in most of the game. You have to write some of the stuff that's more time critical in assembler still. You got to remember both the NES and the Super Nintendo and even the Game Boy aren't running CPUs that are that fast. The Nintendo is like 1.8 megahertz. I think the Super Nintendo is only like 8. Can't remember. pretty sure the Game Boy Advance is 16 megahertz. So let's see. So the Super Nintendo processor, oh, it's not even 8, it's 4 megahertz. So it's pretty slow. And you got a lot to do in those 4 million cycles on the CPU. Not even 4 million. So you got to use assembly. All right. So what am I doing wrong? So I'm writing scroll 2005. That's twice. Is it because of where I'm doing it? Is it because I haven't? It's because I'm doing it here before I do this. Well, let me look back at what I'm doing here. So this is the swap. I'm not changing, what is 2002's bits. So I'm changing which bank it's, or which name table it's looking at to do the smooth scrolling, which is why this is just progressing up. Yeah, GCC can target 6502. The issue isn't that the compiler can't do it. It's just that the compiler is generating code that's not efficient enough to run the game properly. Because it's so time sensitive, you really need to do it in assembly. You can use C, but you have to be very, very sparing with what you do. If you just kind of write standard C and you're not careful, it won't work well. You won't be able to hit every frame properly. There's some tutorials on NES programming in C. There are some homebrew games that are using C, but yeah, you have to be pretty careful about what you do in order to make sure that you are you're not wasting a lot of cycles. And even still, there are going to be places where you have to optimize an assembly. So that's that. I'm not changing. I'm not turning off the NMI and turning it back on like I was. That's fine. Bit 4 is the sprite pattern table, so that's fine. Yeah, 4 megahertz is not a lot. What's the sprite pattern? And on the Nintendo, it's even worse. Like I said, it's like not even 2 megahertz. So, I mean, it's enough to get the game going, but you're talking there are definitely it becomes way more. It's not like today where you've got, you know, multi-core, multi-gigahertz cores. It's you're really constrained. And even, you know, today you can you look at some of the 2D games that are out there, depending on what engine they're written in and how they were developed. You know, they have frame rate issues on those machines, and they run like garbage, even though they should run even better than any 2D game ever written from the 80s or 90s with all the processing power behind them. So this is okay. I'm storing load X to clear that. I'm storing. I'm storing that into 2000. That's fine. Then I'm checking for. I'm waiting for sprite 0. So I'm waiting for the V-blank to actually get reset. Should I do that? Maybe I should. Well, that's. Let me double check that, because I think that gets set when the V-blank is done and it's going to start drawing. So 0 not in V-blank, 1 in V-blank. That's vertical blank is started. Set when a non-zero pixel of the sprite overlaps the non-zero background. Cleared at .1 of the pre-render line. If using sprite 0, hit to make a bottom scroll bar below a vertically scrolling or freely scrolling playfield. Be careful to ensure that the tile in the playfield behind sprite 0 is opaque. Yeah. The background or sprite are hidden in the area. Yeah. Reading QB status at the exact start of VBlank will return 0 in bit 7, but clear the latch anyway. Yeah, but I'm not reading that bit. So once sprite 0 is, it will not be cleared until the end of the next vertical blank. If attempting to use this flag for raster timing, it's important to ensure that sprite 0 hit check happens outside of the vertical blank. Otherwise, the CPU will leak through and the check will fail. The easiest way to do this is to place an earlier check, which will wait for the pre-render. So I'm going to move this earlier. Let's see what happens. I may be misunderstanding that, but all we're really doing is I'm trying to wait for, let's see, where's my process game state. So initialize sprite 0, wait for sprite 0 hit to get cleared. Let's change this to be a little more descriptive. Then we're going to start populating our sprites in hardware. Or, well, actually in RAM before the hardware copy happens. Then we process the flicker, which honestly I don't even care about right now. We do our DMA copy, and then we wait for sprite 0. So let's see if that changes the behavior. Well, it certainly changed the behavior, so interesting. So it was better when it was down before, which is kind of what I thought, because originally my understanding was that wait, sprite 0 clear. Oh, why is that? I don't think that actually matters where it is, but yeah. So my original understanding is that I wanted to wait for it, because basically we get into the NMI, we haven't actually started the drawing yet. We're setting up the sprite memory. And at this point, I want to wait for sprite 0 hit to be clear, and then once that happens, we're waiting for sprite 0 collision to be detected, waiting for the scan line, and then loading the scroll. So let's do this in the debugger. I want to do pause and run to the next sprite 0 hit. So let's see if this is actually having any sort of effect and where we are in the name table. Okay, so okay, good. So we got our sprite 0 hit. We're going to load X with 16 in hex, or 16 decimal, 10 in hex. We're going to decrement until we count down in order to finish the scan line that caused the sprite 0. And then we're going to change the scroll registers, or that's what it should be doing. We're still at that scan line and that dot, so we haven't actually I mean, I was... Where is that? So I was looking at... Where is that? Where the heck was that one? I thought it was here. Nintendo. Oh, it was the wrong list. Sprite 0. So I was looking at this, and we want to wait until Sprite 0 is not hit, and then we want to wait till it's hit. PP is drawing the first pixel of Sprite 0 that overlaps with the pixel background. We add a small wait loop so the rest of the status bar is drawn. And then change the scroll registers. Oh, so this is actually talking about the opposite scenario where, like in Super Mario Brothers, right, this part is drawn first, and then you change the scroll to show the level where it actually is supposed to be on the horizontal part of the map. But that should, in theory, I think, work the same way. And I'm doing... So they're setting 2000 here. I mean, I could effectively do the same thing again. I don't know if that actually matters when you change the scroll. It's possible that changing the scroll register you have to reset 2000, but I don't know if that's actually the case or not. Yeah, it's still just not working. And it's not like it's just not working partially, it's like the whole thing seems not to be working at all. If we slow this down, do we see anything that would give us any indication that maybe it's partially working? Doesn't seem to be. We could change this to some crazy value and see if it has any different effect. It could be that changing it to 0 is maybe the issue. Oh, okay. Well, now, so that's different. So it's definitely doing something, right? Am I changing the scroll? Am I changing the scroll register somewhere else? Check next state. I'm changing it there, which shouldn't matter. Changing it here. So this probably doesn't matter. Yeah, so that didn't matter. But the value I was putting in there definitely made a difference. I mean, so what's cool is you can see that it is changing literally on the scan line right after that sprite. So that's cool that it's at least working the way that I expected it to, but something else is, or it's, I guess it's the couple of scan lines, but something else is wrong because it should be fixed at that point. Like this part of the background shouldn't be changing at all. Even though I am changing the scroll X and scroll Y, this is actually going to be 0 all the time for now anyway. I wonder if I slow it down if I'll see anything different than what I'm seeing here. Like if there's some sort of more obvious thing that I'll see with it being slow. So this does appear to be fixed, this one line, but then the rest is changing. Go back to this for a second. Set the scroll to 0 for status bar. Wait for sprite 0 to hit 0, sprite 0, 1. Delay so scan line finishes, and then set scroll for level background, which is what I'm doing. Just I'm doing it in reverse, essentially. What was this saying? If using sprite 0 hit to make bottom scroll bar below a vertically scrolling or freely scrolling playfield, be careful to ensure that the tile in the playfield behind sprite 0 is opaque. Okay, I get what they're saying there is that you've got to make sure. So what they're saying is that you got to make sure that your sprite 0 is always over something that isn't transparent, otherwise you're going to run into a problem where it's not going to actually do the sprite 0 hit. So what we can do is we can let's reverse this level here, since that's what we're loading. And what we can do is change this to be the opposite. So the outer bars are solid all the time, and the inner part is that gradient pattern. Let's see what the behavior is then. Yeah, so it's like that one scan line is okay, but then the rest of it is still scrolling, which kind of makes me feel like we're... Yeah, it just seems like we're still setting the scroll incorrectly. Let's see, so load game state. If it's load new state, new game, go to check next state. Otherwise, store that and done with PPU. Check next state, go to title screen, branch with not equal process game state. So this is what we're doing for if it is title screen. Otherwise we're going to gameplay state. So we set up in sprite 0. Maybe I will move this scroll changes. Maybe that needs to be... What if I move that to the beginning of the game state? So just set the scrolls up. beginning. Again, I'm not sure that that should make really any difference, but I know all of this is kind of time sensitive. Whoa. Alright, so it's interesting. So let's see if we can see what's going on if we slow this down. So it's almost like partially doing what I would want it to do at this point, but in a really sort of odd way. Like I was expecting it to, yeah, that's really bizarre. I'm not sure. Is this a weird timing thing where it's because at this point we're not ready for the scrolling to be set? Read status register will clear it, yeah. Reading the status register will clear D7, mentioned above, and also the address latch used by PPU scroll. So reading 2002 will, right, so that's what the purpose of doing that is that's clearing out. It's resetting PPU scrolls latch and also the PPU address latch. Oh, but you know what? Maybe I should do this like that. Because that 2006 is the address that we are going to be using for the DMA operation to copy the memory into the sprite memory. Right. So at this point, well, so we clear it out here. I guess it doesn't matter for that. Why are we double writing zeros? We actually don't really even need to do that. That can go away because all we have to do is read 2002 and that clears that out. So it definitely doesn't like the scrolling happening up here. It's interesting. Changes made to the vertical scroll during rendering will only take... Oh! On the next frame. Wait a minute. Typically this register is written to during vertical blanking so that the next frame starts rendering from the desired location, but it can also be modified during rendering in order to split the screen. Changes made to the vertical scroll during rendering will only take effect on the next frame, but the next frame... By the next frame, does it mean the next full screen frame? It seems unlikely. So, I mean, this is actually doing exactly that. No scrolling. It's setting up. So it's actually doing all of this setup a little bit earlier. Now I'm not changing 2000 because in theory I don't think I would technically need to because I'm not changing behavior, but let's see, so loading this, I mean, all of that is already set in. Let's see here. So I know that reading that will clear out things, but I guess, I mean, I could move this up to the top. It's very odd that this is having this effect. But, you know, again, I'm still learning this, so it's entirely possible that I'm just screwing this up and don't understand exactly how this works. Okay, so I was copying that from here. All right, so based on that, we should be doing all of this stuff first, and then doing our population, and then DMA, and then waiting. Let's see if what difference that makes, if any. It may make it worse. Well, it made it slightly different. No, it looks like it's actually the same. Very odd. Do I need to be rewriting? So I'm storing that in 2000, which is... We're saying turn the NMI on, sprite pattern table. Yeah. And then I have swap for when we're swapping. And then I'm clearing that. And then what does 2001 have in it? 2001 is, I mean, again, that's not being changed, so it's kind of weird that we would need to do that. But like, if I'm 000 show sprites background 0 0 and 0 store a 2001. I think that's what he's storing in his as well, and he's got the two other bits turned on. I guess I can do that too. There's nothing that's going to harm anything by having that, but do I need to be rewriting that every time? I thought I was unnecessarily rewriting it. Oh, so that's the behavior is still the same. Let me do a couple things. Let me 4014, I'm pretty sure that's the DMA copy. Yeah. So let me turn off the sprites for a second. I want to see what happens if I just try and manipulate the background directly. Oh, I can't turn off the sprites completely because then we don't get sprite 0 hit. Alright, so let me turn off all the sprites that aren't sprite 0 and then skip that. And, well, yeah, skip all of that because that's related to the flickering, which we don't care about. All right, let's try that again. All right, so that's... So I'm wondering if I'm... So that's interesting. So it's still wrong, but it's not quite as wrong. This should be over here. All right, so let's scroll X and scroll Y. Load A. So writing. Let's see, does that actually change anything if I turn that off? No, the background color is different because of the fact that that text was visible. The palette had changed. So that's not actually affecting anything, so we don't need to do that. We're initializing sprite 0. Oh, crap. I should probably... Oh. You know what? I don't really care about the flicker, though. Just move that over here, and then... move this here again. And we have the sprites turned off. And we're doing our DMA copy. And then I said we didn't need this because it didn't have any actual effect. So let's go back and make sure that this isn't broken now. Okay. So is the problem of the flickering occurring because of the sprites being drawn? No. So interesting. So we're still getting this, but we have to force that? I don't understand. Like, if I make that longer, I assume that it's just going to start that weird line further down on the screen. Well, it's shifted now. Let's make this 30. Oh. Was it just I'm giving it an invalid scroll value, and that's why it's... That's interesting. So, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So do I need to offset now by the amount, by like the negative amount of scroll? If that makes any sense. So let's do this here. Oops. Is this something because we're not doing this in the same way where we're let me reload the ROM. So it is offsetting it, but I'm wondering if what's happening is it's offsetting it based on... That is interesting. So I'm sort of getting the effect that I want, but I want this bottom part to be fixed. If I look at the name table... So normally what you do, like for Super Mario Brothers, what it's doing is it's drawing... Let me pause this for a second. You can even maybe look at that and get a better sense of how it works. Or is it still paused? So I wonder if what's happening is, based on the way the scrolling works, it's scrolling up, right? And we're drawing down, and when we hit this, we're offsetting the scroll value to 0, or well, to 30 in hex. And by doing that, because the background was already scrolling, is that causing... I assume that it's... Oh, because it's not fixed. Because the whole thing is scrolling. Is it an offset? No, but it should just be... Unless I'm just not understanding what that scroll value actually does. This register is used to change the scroll position. Scrolling is the movement of the display portion of the map. Game scroll is shown an area much larger than the screen. Ordinarily, a program writes two PPE registers that set the scroll position and the NMI handler. Find the X coordinates of the upper left corner of the visible area. Write the X, write the Y, write the starting page. Oh, do you have to... maybe that's it. Maybe you have to actually reset the starting page after that. Seems odd that that would be the case, but say, for argument's sake, maybe that's what it is, that after you set the scroll, you do need to, I mean, it shouldn't matter because it's not changing, right? I'm not changing the way yeah, it's still scrolling. It's almost like it's a relative position rather than a fixed one in the name table, which is what I expected it to be. I expected it to be in a fixed position. So if I said scroll to this location, you might see a flip as it switches between the name table areas, because these are really two areas split in half, but it shouldn't be scrolling like that. It should be fixed effectively. So scroll position written to the PPU scroll is applied to the end of the vertical blanking just before rendering begins. Therefore, these writes will need to occur before the end of VBlank. Also, because writes to the PPU address can overwrite the scroll position. They can. The two writes to PPU scroll must be done after any updates to VRAM using PPU address. Interesting. Okay. So that would imply then that this actually needs to occur after we do our DMA copy to set up the proper scroll before we wait for the time to do our next scroll. Our next scroll change, I should say. Okay, so that didn't change the behavior, but I guess that means it's technically more correct. By itself, this allows moving the camera within a usually two-screen area, C with horizontal and vertical wraparound if the camera goes out of bounds. To scroll over a larger area than the two screens, choose the appropriate offset column or row of the name table, which I am doing, and you write that to VRAM before you set the scroll. So what we can even do, just for the sake of making it consistent, is we can force it to use same column, the same row every time. Right, so what we can do is we don't use that swap for the status area. We want that to be fixed. And then if we reset that, is that going to change the behavior? No. Interesting. So if your NMI handler routine takes too long, the PPU scroll is not set before the end of VBlank. The scroll will not be correctly applied to this frame. Most games, I feel like it's applying. I feel like it's applying the change relative to the screen that's being drawn. PPU scroll must always be set after using 2006. So that's fine. I mean, that's what I'm doing here, right? Because in draw entities, it is setting up the sprites, and then wait. So maybe not. What is 2006? Is the address? Oh, so maybe that's why it was messing up, because I was using 2006 for this, which was the palette flicker that I was calculating. So it's possible that that's what was causing some of the problem we were seeing. we have the proper scroll. We wait for sprite 0 to be clear. Then we wait for it to be set. And we could even wait for it to be clear at the beginning here, because frankly, it should be. Coming into the NMI, it should be cleared by the new v blank. Nice. So that's not right. So what is that actually doing? Let's see in slow motion. So here it's like alternating. All right, so that obviously was no good. It's interesting that that's the case. I guess it's because it doesn't clear that bit out until the end of the next vertical blank. Ensure that the sprite 0 hit check happens outside the vertical blank. Okay. So that's obviously worse. Let me do this. If I make this 0 and then I make this like 20. Nothing happens. Make this, well, 10. Doesn't like it doesn't seem to like a value of 0, or it doesn't have any effect. It's interesting, the change of y, or maybe it does and I'm not seeing it because it's scrolling at the same rate in the same position. So like if I do 1 and 1, it should be ever so slightly off. It is ever so slightly off, okay. So if I make this 0 and 5, I'm gonna make sure it's not a multiple of the sprite, or sorry, of the tiles, so that it's obviously different, but it doesn't seem like it is. So that's weird. So the y value is not having any effect. Man, this is bizarre. This is not what I was expecting it to do. So the x value has an effect. So it's actually shifting it. It's shifting the scroll to the right just fine. When you write to 2005, what is the order? It's the x and then the y. So, like, I would expect it to, if I used a value of, let's say, 10, I would expect it to still look like something was happening, but just only be misaligned on the bottom. But it doesn't even look like that is the case. It looks like it's ignoring the Y completely. Why would that be? No pun intended. If we let's see, if we go to initializing our sprite 0 and make the position, I'm going to make the position of this much higher. I'm going to move it towards the top of the screen. You're in the wrong spot. There it is. Yeah, I don't see any difference. I don't see any difference in this. Like, this is aligning, and it should be messing up the scroll. But if I just, like, that's the weird thing, right? It's like if I change the X scroll by 1 pixel, it very obviously scrolls. Change the speed back to 10%, so we can see it. Yeah, so you can see it's actually obviously shifting everything to the left a little bit because the scroll register is scrolling to the right. Shouldn't Y shift not be noticeable on a scroll of Y value? Well, I mean, what I was expecting to see happen, and maybe you're right, but what I was expecting to see happen is, like, if we've got this playing field, right? The screen is here and it's moving in this direction. And what I'm expecting to have happen is I say, okay, this is the scroll position, and we're going to draw, and it's going to draw all the way down until it gets to the sprite 0 here, right? And then when it hits sprite 0, I wanted to set it so that we could have the status bar be only like in the top part. I mean, this is not to scale because it should be the same size. So the status bar should be a meta tile high here, and it should be, you know, like it would be black potentially, where it should be resetting. Oh, wait a minute. Let me think about that. You might be right. Maybe for a different reason than if I'm decrementing this, that means that, what is my scroll starting at? It's starting at 0, and then it becomes, you know, the highest possible value here, the 240, I guess, right? And then it's going up here, and then it's flipping back to here. I mean, wouldn't Y shift not be noticeable on a scroll of Y value? Shifting down shouldn't do anything because you have more at minus Y. I mean, yeah, but like it should at least be misaligned, right? Like I'm definitely changing the scroll value to be something other than what it was. I don't know what you mean by controlling the start of the draw for the map. You don't do that. You can change the tiles on the name table, and you can change the scroll position. You can't change where draw. I mean, that's effectively what the scroll does, is it changes what part of the map you're starting to draw at. So what I'm saying is, like, with this being a fixed scroll value, part of the map shouldn't change at all. Like, at one point it might match up with, but like this whole fixed area, like if I take this, can I do that? Like, what I'm expecting to see is that I'm going to get this part. Well, right now the sprite is here, but what I was hoping to achieve is that you have this part actually scrolling the way you expect, and then this part would be fixed, because it would always have the same scroll register value once you hit the sprite 0, if it were down at the bottom here. So yeah, so just to emphasize what I was talking about before, if you look at the name table, let me go back to normal speed. You only have this area to draw in, and then what determines what part of this gets drawn is the scroll register, which is what we're setting to cause it to do this scrolling action. Now, to do something like a status bar, or a, you know, like in Super Mario Brothers or something like that, and we can even potentially load that up to look at it for a second, but you have one part of this that's always fixed in order to have it be whatever status information you want, and then the rest of it is what's changing as you move. The challenge with doing a, I mean, there's going to be a challenge with what I'm trying to do with the status bar being on the horizontal part of the screen across this way, because now we've got to be careful about what we're updating. But that's fine as long as we are updating the tiles and the scroll accordingly to offset for the status bar. But I'm still just not getting that Y scroll change to happen properly, which is really strange, because let me go back to sprite 0 and change that. And actually, let me see. So screen is 240, and I want to be offset by 1 meta tile, which is what did I say? It's 32. Oh, it's 32 by 32. So D0 and hex. Okay, so we're back to this being where it is right now. I'm still, like, if I were to do another write to 2005, it shouldn't do anything, but I feel like somewhere I'm missing. Right, so that's shifted by X, because it is actually writing X, because I guess every time you write to it, it resets back to, or alternates between 2005 and sorry, X and Y. All right, so that was kind of what I expected it to do. I'm still, I feel like I'm still missing something, like it's being offset by the current value or something to that effect. Reading PP status exact start of the vertical blank will return 0 in bit 7, but clear the latch anyway. Am I doing that at the beginning? I don't think I am. No, I'm doing some other stuff before that, so that's fine. I can clear this out. You even just do a bit of it. Still no noticeable effect, which is so strange. This part should be fixed. So I'm sure it's just something stupid that I'm doing, and but I couldn't tell you what it is at the moment because it's pretty subtle, I feel like, here. This comment no longer makes sense. Does that actually didn't make any difference, I don't think. No, it did not. We're still seeing the same exact behavior where the X is being offset, the Y is not. Okay. I mean, and you can't do a negative scroll because it doesn't exist. I mean, it's just not even doing anything. It's behaving exactly the same way. Yeah, it's not even subtly changing. Man, this is... Unless it's some weird thing where, depending on your mirroring, it won't work. Is that a thing? Like if I change the mirroring, obviously it's going to break some stuff, but is that going to cause it to then... Wait. Is that not the mirroring bit? Yeah, let me, I'll get to your question in a second here. I just want to look at the header format before I get to what you're asking about. All right, so that was right. That was just that bit, unless I have, yeah. And then if I look at the name table, yeah, so it's just reversed. And that's fine. It's still not doing any shifting of the Y value. Not even a little bit. That's so weird. All right. So to answer, so let me see what you're asking here. You're asking when you shift Y at the location, at that location, is it shifting the map at that point? I think I'm confused by how the scroll thing is working in this language. Does the first frame of the program run look the same as the first frame when shifting the Y? I don't know about the first frame. We can look at that, but basically, so you're not rendering. What's the half tile doing in that last run? Which half tile are you referring to? There is, so basically what it's doing is I've got the map, I've got the background map populated with the tiles for the screen. It's split into 2 screens worth of tiles, right? And the scrolling, you have a row. Oh, that's an artifact of the mirroring of the tiles. So if you go and look at the name tables, it's because right now I'm drawing only half the tiles, essentially. I'm drawing, because the mirroring was switched to be mirroring horizontally so that it was mirroring from this part across to here, I'm only drawing tiles from over here. So one full screen doesn't fully fit all the meta tiles, versus when I was mirroring where I had this screen and then it mirrors across, so I'm mirroring vertically. So when I refresh this, because I had changed the mirroring bit, you'll see that that half meta tile goes away, and that's because I'm actually fully drawing down the 2 name table screens properly now. Before, with the mirroring changed, I would have to change the way it's writing to the memory, because this point in memory is a different point than this one, and it does matter depending on which mirroring you have turned on. In one of the earlier streams, I had that problem where it would only draw part of the screen, or draw the whole screen and then just draw part of the screen, and it turned out it was because I was essentially overwriting the screen with the second half of, or the second part of the data, because I was writing over here and it's mirrored, instead of writing here and then writing here. It's a little confusing because they're not really, it's not really congruous, or it's not really linearly mapped memory in the way that you would think it is, because like this is address 2000, this is address 2400, this is address 2800, and this is address 2C100, right? So normally what I had thought was that if you had mirroring happening in one direction or the other when you wrote to the tile memory, the name table memory, that depending on how the mirroring was occurring, it would actually be just a linear write down the screen. So if you start from here, you write all the way down to the bottom by just populating tiles, but that's not actually true. What you have to do is, depending on your mirroring, you have to say, okay, I start at 2000, I draw one screen, and when I get to the end of that screen, I then need to go to the next memory address that's valid depending on the memory. So because I'm horizontally mirroring, I don't want to go to 2400, which is what it was doing. I want to go to 2800. And by going to 2400 initially, by just incrementing the value, what it was doing is it's actually overwriting this because it's mirrored. The CPU is overwriting the same space in PPU memory by doing that. So what I have to do, because of the way that it's mirroring, is I fill up one screen, then I change the address that I'm writing to, and I fill up the other screen with the rest of the tiles that I want to write. And then in order to move through that, you modify your scroll register, right? So the scroll register, you can think of it like it was saying in the document in NESDev. The scroll register, you can think of it as like your camera port, right? And it's just going to move in whatever direction you change the scroll to. Now, because the way we have the game set up is that it only has these two screens that you can populate that are mirrored over here, when we're scrolling in this direction, we're just changing the Y scroll value, right? We're saying scroll up this screen space in memory to display the tiles that are over here. Now, if we had a larger map, what we could do is when we got to this point in the scrolling, we could actually overwrite these tiles with additional tile information and give the illusion, essentially, that we were moving through a larger space, right? So when you get to this point where the scroll now has to flip back to this part of it, you can have it be at the bottom here and start scrolling up again, but you've replaced these tiles, and so it makes the world look a lot bigger. And you can see that that's what would happen if I were overwriting the tiles with new values as this line. This line is the Y scroll register scrolling up and then flipping back over to the bottom of these name table screens. But because we're not loading any new tiles, it's just flipping back, and it's very obviously looping just over and over again through the memory. So what I'm trying to do is the following, which is that, can I pause this? So what I'm trying to do is, so this sprite here on the screen, you can have the Nintendo set a bit when this sprite is being drawn, so that you can do something like, update the screen at that time. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that once we get to this point, I want to force the Y scroll register to be at a fixed position, so that this part of the screen is always the same. It's only this top part that's scrolling. But for some reason right now what's happening is that the Y value doesn't seem to be having any effect on the scrolling, even though it should. Like, it's pretty strange. Like, I'm setting the X and Y here to scroll to scroll to the right place in the map, and then I'm waiting for us to get to this. I'm waiting for the sprite clear to be set, which means that the drawing is actually going to occur. And then I'm waiting for the sprite 0 bit to be hit, which means that the scan line has gotten to the point where it's drawing this bit. It's drawing this pixel on another pixel, and they're both non-transparent pixels. Let me just take a look for a second at not OEM data, pattern tables. So black is the background color. So I just wanted to make sure that black was the background color in all cases, just in case I was accidentally, not getting sprite 0 hit all the time. But it is. It's that part's not the issue. It just seems like that when I get to this point where I'm drawing the screen, changing the Y scroll isn't having any actual effect. Changing the X scroll has an effect, because what ends up happening is in this name table, the X is right up against this line here, but what happens is that I increase it a little bit, and you can see that by this scroll line moving to the right, it's going to appear like the tiles are shifted to the left, right? So it's almost like the camera got bumped to the right a little bit, which means that these tiles here will shift to the left. And we definitely saw that happening. Like if I shift it by 8 pixels, it should be off by an entire subtile of the meta tile, right? Since the meta tile is made up by 4 tiles by 4 tiles, it should be a pretty clear offset. And sure enough it is. You can see it's off by 1 8 by 8. So that part is actually working fine, but it seems like it's ignoring my changes to the Y scrolling, which is so weird, only because something makes me feel like it's almost being offset or something. Like if I load this with 8, right, that shouldn't change that this is getting bumped. Like it should still be bumped. Or no, I take that back. If I bump this to 8, it should now be aligned, and that bump should not be there, right? So right, so now I can see that my X offset, right, had over here had an effect on this one, because even though we're still doing the same sprite 0 calculation, the 2 scroll positions are set to the same. So if I now make this 0, it should have the opposite effect of shifting the bottom to the right, right? Yeah. So again, this is behaving exactly as I expected to on the X register, on the X scroll register, but on the Y, for some reason, man, it's not doing what I expect it to do. What we can do is we can look at debug this and step through scan line by scan line, which is going to be tedious, but we can see if there's any sort of obvious change. So actually I want to make this oh, I just want them both to be 0, really. I just want it to be fixed. So that's that, and then so in the debugger, I want to pause and I want to run till I get a sprite 0 hit. So that's where we are, and then I want to do the next scan line. And so I'm going scan line by scan line, so you can see it's at 213, but nothing has changed. If I go to the name table, Y is exactly the same. Can I look at, let's see, can I actually see the scroll values in here somewhere? Scan line .1 2002. I feel like there should be a way to see that. I mean, I can always go to, what memory is this? PPU memory, but that's going to be a different location. Where is that in PPU memory? PPU. Can I see the scroll register in name tables, pattern tables, palette RAM? Oh, actually, yeah, they're PP registers, not PP memory. Where can I see that in here? Wasn't expecting to spend the entire stream on this, but it is driving me crazy that I can't figure out why this is not working. Program counter scan line. Debugger shows current values of CPU CPU and PP registers and data on the stack. So where are the PCA XYF status flags? 2007, 2002. What are is 2000? Right, that's 2002. That's 2004. What's 2007? Registers. Yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. Here it is, camera Y. I was looking for something that was more analogous to the actual NES name. So it's still increasing the camera Y. Mode A1. Sprite 0. Where's that code? Load A1, store it in 7FF. Okay, so that's this breakpoint here. Okay. So we set that breakpoint and then resume. What we should see is that the camera Y. Yeah, see, the camera Y is still. That is interesting. So the camera Y. Why is the camera X changing? Is that the... What is V? How are camera X and Y computed? V shifted by 2, where V and X are the current VRAM addresses, and the fine X scroll 3 bits, respectively. Camera X is this V value shifted by 2 ANDed, or by V shifted by 3 and F8. And then Y. If Y is greater than 240, then it's Y minus 16. Otherwise, it's just Y. But the thing is that we're setting it to be 0. So what the hell? It's saying that it's 312. Y is so I guess it's rendering that out to a buffer, so you can't actually see it doing the line-by-line update, which would be cool if you could. get the distinct feeling that the scroll Y is in some way being modified by the current scan line, which is why this isn't working. Like you do. Where's that breakpoint? So every screen it's updating it. Let me try something else. So can I make that overflow and behave differently? Nope. Strange. I do see that the camera Y does seem to be getting modified, but not to what I want it to be, right? A0 is what? A0 is 160. Camera X is 32. Yeah, and this is just drawing. You can actually. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's okay. That's my mistake. I didn't. Oh, it's increasing the scan line every time, huh? I just wanted to do it to sprite 0 was hit. Yeah, this is weird. I mean, it's like partially working, but something is... I'm obviously not understanding something about the way that the Y value is affected on the scroll register, because just giving it values doesn't seem to have the same kind of effect as it does with the X. And I mean, what we could do, actually, this would at least prove that something is happening. We could I'm going to remove the actual scrolling. Oops. So it's not going to actually scroll anymore, so what we should just see is just a fixed offset where it's misaligned here. But see, even that's not... like that looks exactly like what it did before. There is no change. Whereas if I so let's do one change at a time. So if I do this, there's not going to be any difference, but if I change the X again, we're going to probably see, yes, there's no, change the X scroll by some arbitrary amount, and yeah, that's skewing it. I mean, am I crazy? Am I just doing something wrong? I don't understand what, I mean, obviously I'm doing something wrong, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it should be working based on what I'm reading, and I don't understand what I'm messing up. So there's no change. Well, okay, so on sprite 0 hit it's there, but I guess that's probably because that's where the sprite is, but that's not the value it should have. I'm gonna have to, I think I'm gonna have to consult some experts, because how do you know you're changing X or Y when they both, so by reading, when you do this bit operation on 2002, it resets the latch for register 2005. Register 2005 is the scroll register, and the first write to the scroll register updates the X scroll, and then the second update updates the Y scroll. So internally, the PPU is keeping track of how many times it's been written to and what address it's actually updating, whether it's the X or the Y. So it's just one of those weird things about the way that the NES works. I mean, it's so what you can actually kind of do that would be crazy is we could even do something like this, where we could do this twice, right? We could say this, and then so this will be fun. So this will skew it twice. And if you actually cared about doing this the right way, you could have like a cool graphical effect appear by doing that update. And I'm only doing it on the X because I know that actually works. So you can see it's like it's flickering because it's not a really reliable way of making this thing do proper updates to the scroll. But if you've ever played a game where it has like a sort of complex shimmering, like a wavy graphic pattern or something like that, then they're updating that scroll in real time. So you can see it kind of like change the scroll across a couple of lines. I can even do, as I increase this, it's allowing more lines to draw, and then shifting it in sort of larger chunks. But again, you know, the thing that's bizarre about all of this is that the X works perfectly fine. The Y, not so much. And damned if I know why that is. I mean, it's probably something really stupid and obvious for someone who's been doing this for a while, but I don't see any obvious information in here about... Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Changes made to the vertical scroll during rendering will only take effect on the next frame. That's the part that I was missing. But how... But that doesn't make sense because... during the vertical blanking, so... If that's the case, then how would this no vertical scrolling, right? The horizontal scroll, right? Because it's scrolling horizontally, not vertically. So is that the problem? You can't do... That may very well be the problem. If that is the case, let's see. Well, that would be very frustrating that I wasted all this time trying to figure that out just because I didn't read that carefully enough. It's amazing how one word can really make a huge difference here. So, yeah. So that's kind of, I mean, it's not exactly right. Something is still, oh no, that's, okay. Well, anyway. So that's kind of the effect I was going for, except instead of it scrolling side to side, I want it to scroll this way. But apparently, you can't do that. So, something is definitely modifying. Oh, because it's actually modifying. That's pretty funny. So it's modifying the scroll Y depending on the X scroll position, even though that doesn't actually make sense. There we go. Now, yeah. No? I don't know. Anyway, so that sort of accomplishes what I was trying to do, but the problem now is, and that's also interesting. Oh, because of the, so why is the scrolling? Oh, I wonder. So it could be because the, let's see here. Okay, yeah. So I want to set the scroll regardless of the sprites. So what was happening is that based on the number of sprites, it was actually slowing down when we were setting the scrolling, which was then making it appear that the game was slowing down when realistically it was just delaying. Yeah, so that, well, it's still happening. Did I not? That is an interesting effect too that I was not expecting to see. wonder why that is happening. So, well, we made some progress here. We figured out why the scrolling isn't working the way, or the sprite 0 stuff isn't working the way that I wanted it to, which is because of the fact that you can't scroll that way. At least not during the frame. You can't change it during the frame like you can. It's interesting that it's slowing it down so much. Is it because, I wonder, I have to look into what's causing it to slow that down. Or it could just be because of the sprite 0 hit timing that we're doing here. Like if I remove this all, there's really no noticeable slowdown. So it's something with the way that we're adding, I guess because we've added this delay, and based on the number of sprites being drawn, it's adding delay to the game because it's waiting in the loop for it to actually hit sprite 0 now, and you have all these sprites on screen. Interesting. So, the question then becomes, what, if anything, can we do? Well, there are a couple of questions, right? Like, so the first question is, how are we going to deal with this? Because originally I wanted to have the status bar on the bottom and have horizontal scrolling. So there's got to be a way to do it. And, I mean, I assume... I don't know. I don't know how you'd have to do it. I have to go back and look and see, like, are there NES games that do that? I thought there were. Okay, and so this is happening in the same way on FCEUX, so it's not unique to Nintendo. I was wondering if that was an artifact of the way that Nintendo works, but let me put my scrolling back. So I've definitely seen. I'm almost positive there are games that do that. I just would have to look at what they're doing to figure out how they're doing it. But I can't think of any off the top of my head that I actually have access to right now. I mean, the obvious case of, you know, games that do the horizontal scrolling is the Super Mario Brothers, which is the example that was used here, right? I mean, so the sprite 0 is here at the bottom of the coin, and then it just horizontally scrolls, which is fine. So now the next question is, like, what do I have to do to make... Well, Ultima, I can look at that. I'm just wondering if that's actually scrolling or redrawing. I gotta look and do some research on that, but at least we've answered the question of why it was behaving that way, so I feel reasonably okay with that. I mean, it's still not great. I spent the whole stream trying to figure out a problem that wasn't really a problem, but just me missing a critical word in this. So Um, yeah, I need to do some research. Explains why effects that you see, like if you've ever played, um, the only thing that's coming to mind right now is Twin Dragons, which is a new homebrew game. Um, they have a really cool sort of water effect that they use in the beginning, where they're changing the horizontal. Um, they're changing the horizontal scroll with every uh, line being drawn to give like this shimmering effect, kind of like water, which looks really cool. But I can't, off the top of my head, think of games that do that, that have a vertical or have a status bar on the game and scroll the other way. I gotta look. Um, I'll do some research and get back to it on Monday, and hopefully have an answer as to how we're gonna do it. Um, Sorry, this was kind of a lame stream this week, but that's why I got to read carefully, I guess. Any questions before we wrap this up? Well, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to wrap up the recording. Yeah, learning is a project, and you know, as I keep saying, I'm learning as I go through this. So, you know, you're seeing in real time, you're seeing in real time all the screw ups I do. So hopefully you can learn from it and not make the same mistakes. And then I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is kind of go back and distill some of these things into smaller videos, like, you know, little 5-minute chunks where we can cover core concepts just in like a little recap video, so that people don't have to watch these long 2-hour videos if they don't want to. But all right, well, thanks for watching. Have a good night, and we'll see you Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern for the next one.